Okay, so Zuo Lengqian, remember this guy? This guy is the leader of the Songshan school, and he's very power hungry, and he wants to combine the 5 sword schools, right? Zuo Lengqian butted in. Great, Master Abbot. Is the host here? So he would definitely fight. So they're deciding on who is gonna fight, right? So he would definitely fight. My martial art hasn't seen any use for the last 10 years, so I'll give it a try. And the third person, this competition was Priest Chongshu's idea, so he won't just be a spectator in this and let other people face this problem. So he has to show his Taiji sword art here. Although each of these 10 people was not just any ordinary fighter, Great Master Feng Zheng, Priest Chongshu, and he himself had the highest martial arts. When he picked these 3 people to fight, it could be said that they were now in an invincible position. Ying Ying was only an 18 to 19-year-old girl. Even though her martial art was high, her cultivation of it was still limited. So no matter which school leader she fought, she was doomed to lose. Yue Buchun and the rest of the people also agreed to this method. Great Master Feng Zheng, Priest Chongshu, and Zuo Lengqian were the Orthodox school's 3 top masters. Any of their martial art was unlikely to be below Ren Woxing. Compared to Xiang Wentian, they were most likely better by half a level, so they were most likely to win this best 2 out of 3 fights. Even if they had to win all 3 fights, they still had a 50% chance. What everyone worried about was that they would fail to capture Ren Woxing and allow him to escape down the mountain. He then would violently harm each of their loved ones, so only if they fought upright and decisive battles would they have nothing to fear. Ren Woxing said, Best two out of 3 fights is inappropriate. Let's just fight 1 battle. You pick 1 person to come out, and we'll also pick 1 person. And just fight 1 fight to decide this. Brother Ran, if you only fight by yourself today, you'll be at a disadvantage. Not just the 10 people here. Even if you have 3 times more people, Great Master Abbot can call out 20 to 30 more masters from the Shaolin school, and we haven't even counted the number of good fighters from the other schools, Zuo Lengqian said. That's why you're going to rely on numbers to win, Ren Woxing sneered. Right, we're going to rely on numbers to win. How shameless! Killing people for no reason is also shameless. Killing people must have a reason? Headmaster Zuo, do you eat meat? Or are you a vegetarian? If I want to kill someone, then I'll kill him. Why do I have to be a vegetarian? Every person you killed deserved to be killed? Naturally, Zuo Lengqian said confidently. But Ren Woxing continued, You eat cows and sheep. These cows and sheep, what kind of sins do they have? Great Master Feng Zheng said, Amitofo. What Shizu Ren said is according to the heart of Buddha. Okay, he's a Buddhist, so he loves that. Great Master Feng Zheng, don't be fooled by his words. He's saying that our 8 innocent disciples are like cows and sheep, Zuo Lengqian said. Remember, Ren Woxing killed 8 of their disciples, like in the previous chapter. Insects, ants, cows, sheeps, immortal Buddha. Mortal people, they're all living things, Ren Woxing said. Feng Zheng again said, Yes, Amitofo. Brother Ran, you keep delaying this. You're afraid to fight today? Provoked Zuo Lengqian. Ren Woxing suddenly let out a long whistle, which rattled and shook all the tiles in the room. The 12 candles on the offering table dimmed. When he stopped whistling, the candles burned brightly again. Hearing his whistle, everyone felt their hearts thumping wildly. Their faces changed colors. Ren Woxing declared, All right, Zuo, let's fight. Zuo Langchan affirmed what was at stake. What a gentleman said cannot be taken back. Best 2 out of 3 fights. If the 3 of you lost 2 fights, then all of you must stay on Mount Shaoshi for 10 years. Alright, best 2 out of 3 fights. If we lose 2 out of 3 fights, then the 3 of us will stay on Mount Shaoshi for 10 years. When the Orthodox people heard how Ren Wuxing was provoked by Zuo Langchan into agreeing to the fight, all their faces looked happy. Ren Wuxing continued, I'll fight you for 1 fight. Left Protector Xiang will fight this dwarf, you. My daughter is a female, so she'll fight a woman. She'll fight Heroine Ning. Zuo Langchan hastily said, No, we decide ourselves who will fight for our side. How can you appoint the people for us? So you must choose yourself and can't let the other party choose for you? Ren Wuxing asked. Zuo Langchan confirmed, that's right. Shaolin and Wudong's is big leaders. Also, add me in there. Depending on your prestige, status, and martial art, how can you be on par with Shaolin and Wudong's 2 big leaders? Zuo Langchan uttered a huh and said, I don't dare to consider myself to be on par with Shaolin and Wudong's big leaders, but I'll manage to fight with you. Ren Wuxing laughed loudly. Ha ha ha! Great Master Fang Zheng! I want to ask you to teach me Shaolin's divine fist. You want to accompany me? Amitofo. Old monk hasn't practiced my martial art for a long time, and isn't Shizu's match. But this old monk is already here, and wants to keep you on this mountain, so I'll have to put my old bones through some of your punches and kicks. Zuo Langchan saw him unexpectedly challenge Great Master Fang Zheng. He understood that he did this to scorn him, but he was actually happy. I was originally worried that I would have to fight him, and he would let Xiang Wentian fight Chongshu. Then he would let his daughter fight Fang Zheng. If Priest Chongshu is careless, and I lost to you, it would have been disastrous. He didn't say anything anymore and stepped back a few steps. The other people moved the corpses of those 8 people aside to clear the middle of the hall. Great Master Abbot, please. Both of Ren Wuxing's sleeves were hanging down as he cupped his fist. Fang Zheng put his palms together to return the propriety. Shizu, please, move first. I'm using Sun Moon Sect's orthodox martial art. Great Master is using Shaolin School's orthodox skills. We're both using orthodox skills to fight orthodox skill, so we definitely have to go on with this fight. Yu Changhai said, What orthodox skills does your devil sect have? No shame. Abbot, let me kill this dwarf you first, then I'll fight you, Ren Wuxing said. Fang Zheng hastily replied, You can't. He knew that this person's fist was like lightning and his strikes were like thunder, so he didn't tarry and immediately sent a palm out. Shizu, run! Guard yourself. This palm he sent out looked ordinary, but halfway through the strike, it suddenly swayed. The single palm suddenly turned into 2 palms. 2 palms turned into 4 palms. 4 palms turned into 8 palms. 1,000 hands of Rulai! The words escaped Ren Wuxing's mouth. He knew that if he was late for a bit longer, his 8 palms would turn into 16 palms, and then it would continue to transform into 32. With a shout, Ren Wuxing immediately sent a palm out to attack Fang Zheng's right shoulder. Fang Zheng shot his left palm out underneath the bottom of his right, and then swayed slightly and started to transform. The shadows of the palm turned from 1 to 2 and 2 to 4. Ren Wuxing jumped up and shot out 2 palms of his own. Ling Huchang peered from his vantage point to observe the fight. Great Master Fang Zheng's palm moves were unpredictable. Every strike he shot out, it always changed into many different directions when it reached halfway. The palm moves were like illusions and couldn't be observed. On the other hand, Runwal Singh's palm moves were simple. When he struck out or pulled his palm back, it looked quite stiff. But no matter where Fang Zhang's palm struck out, Runwal Singh would immediately follow every change and sent his palm there. Ling Huchang saw that these two people were well matched as they fought with all their powers. His bare fist martial art was very shallow, so he was still not proficient on Dugu Nine Swords' palm-breaking stance. Thus, he was not able to see the flaws in their fist martial art and was unable to see where he could attack. These two masters were executing the world's highest and most profound palm moves. Ling Huchang was bewildered and did not understand the refined essences of the moves. In sword art, I was victorious against Priest Chongshu, and I wouldn't lose to Mr. Ren if we fight. But against these two people's palm martial art, I have to constantly attack them with sharp sword. Grand Master Uncle Feng said, I have to practice for 20 years before I can fight the world's elite masters. When he said that, he was probably mainly referring to the palm-breaking stance. What's up, Pachula? Hey, thanks for joining. Whiplash, thank you so much. I'm glad you enjoy the videos. He watched for a while longer and suddenly saw Runwal Singh pushing out with both hands, forcing Great Master Feng Zhang to retreat 3 steps. Ling Huchang was alarmed. Aiyo, this is bad. Great Master Feng Zhang is going to lose. After that, he saw Great Master Feng Zhang's left palm drew a few circles while his right palm struck out. It struck out to the top, bottom, left, and right. After striking out a few times, Runwal Singh retreated a step. After a few more strikes, Runwal Singh retreated a step again. Ling Huchang thought, Good. He softly let out a sigh and thought, why do I worry when Great Master Feng Zhang is losing, but become comforted when I saw him fight back? That must be it. Great Master Feng Zhang is a righteous, eminent monk, while Chief Ren is, after all, a person from the unorthodox sect. My heart still distinguishes between good and evil, and right and wrong. But he changed his mind and again thought, but if Chief Ren lost, Ying Ying will be detained on Mount Shaoshi for 10 years. How can that be what my heart wishes for? After a moment, he did not know himself who he really wanted to win or lose. In his heart, he secretly felt that when this Runwal Singh, father, daughter, and Xiang Wenjian entered Jianghu, then there would be great disturbance in the force. But in his heart, he also thought, what's so bad about great disturbance? Wouldn't that be very lively? He slowly swept his eyes across to look at Ying Ying. She was leaning on a pillar, looking very delicate and fragile. Her eyebrows were slightly wrinkled, looking really worried. Suddenly, a feeling of pity flourished in Ling Huchang's heart. How can I let her be held captive for 10 years here? How can she pass through this kind of torment? At this thought, he remembered how Ying Ying was willing to give up her life to save his. Throughout his whole life, he had had many generous martial friends, but not one of them would go so far as to give their lives for him. A hot feeling started to rush forth in his chest. He did not care anymore if Ying Ying was the daughter of the devil sect's chief, or if the evil things she had done were unpardonable. He was resigned to the fact that everyone in the world would want to kill him, as he decided that he was going to protect her and not let any harm come to her. The 11 pairs of eyes in the hall were watching the fight between Great Master Feng Zhang and Runwal Singh attentively. They were praising the palm moves of both fighters in their hearts. Zuo Lengchan was relieved. Luckily, this old freak Ren picked the fight with Great Master Feng Zhang. Otherwise, I wouldn't know how to handle this clumsy palm move of his. Compared to my own school's great Song Yang Divine Palm, his move seems to be more complicated and have more changes. His palm move is better than mine. He only attacks at a specific point and nothing else. Xiang Wenxian was thinking, Shaolin schools' martial arts have enjoyed their reputation for 1,000 years. They are really no small matter, even though great Master Feng Zheng's 1,000 hands of Ru-Lai is very complicated. Its power isn't dispersed at all. This is very difficult to do if I have to fight him. I wouldn't be able to trade moves with him, so I have to compare inner power. Yue Buchun, Yu Canghai, and the rest of the people were there were also comparing their own martial arts against these two people's moves. Oh, you're right. Monkey 6 did kind of lose his life caring for Ling Hucheng. But I mean, he didn't know he was going to lose his life, right? He didn't choose to die, I think, right? Yeah, he didn't directly choose to die, right? But he was a very loyal friend. He did choose to stay and take care of Ling Hucheng. Run Wo-Sing had now fought for a long time. He gradually felt that the great Master Feng Zheng's moves were getting slightly slower. He secretly felt happy. Even though your palm move is wonderful, you're old already. It's hard to keep it up for a long time. He immediately attacked repeatedly. After his fourth strike, he felt a slight tingling on his right arm as he pulled his palm back, and he felt his internal energy not working smoothly. He felt alarmed and knew that it was his own inner energy that was disturbed. He thought, this old monk's tendon-altering sutra is indeed powerful. We haven't clashed palms yet, but he can restrain my internal energy. What's up, Nasty? You wanted to say what's up? Hey, what's up? Thanks for joining. Glad you could join. He knew that if they fight longer, his opponent's abundant internal energy would eventually come out, and he would be in an unfavorable position. He saw the great Master Feng Zheng's left palm struck out. With a cry, he also sent his left palm out rapidly. The two palms clashed, and they both retreated a step. Run Wo-Sing felt that even though his opponent's energy was soft, it was abundant and matchless. He also used his art of essence absorbing, but unexpectedly he could not absorb the great Master Feng Zheng's energy at all. He was confounded. Great Master Feng Zheng said, well done, and followed with his right palm striking out. Run Wo-Sing again struck his right palm out to meet it. Both faltered from the impact. Run Wo-Sing felt his whole body shaken and immediately took 2 steps backwards. When his second step landed, he turned his body around and his right hand shot out and grabbed Yu Canghai's chest. Then he raised his left hand to smash it down on Yu Canghai's head. This situation was just like a rabbit being captured by a falcon, and nobody had expected this turn of event. They all had their eyes on the fight between Run Wo-Sing and the great Master Feng Zheng and saw that the situation was gradually becoming disadvantageous towards Run Wo-Sing. Normally, he would put all his power into protecting himself, but who would have thought that he would turn around and attack Yu Canghai? This turn of events was just too strange and too quick for Yu Canghai, even though he was a martial artist of the same generation. If he were to actually fight with Run Wo-Sing, even though he would lose at the end, he would not have been captured in just one move. Everyone gasped in surprise while the great Master Feng Zheng leapt and struck his 2 palms out. It was as if he was flying as he rushed at Run Wo-Sing, aiming at the back of his head. This move was known in martial study as attacking the enemy's rear in order to make him give up his own attack, and the enemy would have no choice but to rescue himself. The aim of this attack was to make Run Wo-Sing withdraw his own attack towards Yu Canghai's head and turn around to block the attack. The other masters saw how Great Master Feng Zhang shot his palm out in the blink of an eye, and they were all very impressed by this. But there was not enough time to cheer, although they knew that he had saved Yu Sanghai's life. But no one could have guessed that when Run Walxing withdrew his left hand, he did not try to block the strike. Instead, his left hand grabbed Great Master Feng Zhang's Tangzhong acupoint, while his right hand was thrust towards the chest. Great Master Feng Zhang's body became immediately weak and dropped to the ground. Everyone was surprised and one by one called out as they crowded around him. Oh, that was a dirty trick, wasn't it? Zuo Langchan suddenly flew out and violently shot his palm out towards Run Walxing's back. Run Walxing turned his hand around to strike back. He shouted at the same time, "All right, this is the second fight." Zuo Langchan's hand suddenly kept on changing. It changed from a fist into a palm, into a stab, into a grab. In a short time, it had changed more than 10 times. So it looks like these are all like the top tier fighters of the martial arts world. So our eyes are being opened at this moment, you guys. What's up, RK? Even though he was repeatedly attacked, Run Walxing was able to resist for a moment by exerting his power. He had just fought with Great Master Feng Zhang. Even though the last 3 moves he used against the abbot were mostly based on his ingenuity and cunning, he had still used up a lot of energy. Otherwise, how can this Shaolin school's headmaster, with abundant internal energy, let him grab his Tangzhong acupoint? How could he let him hit his heart with his fingers? These last few moves were done with all of his strength, as he was staking everything on this attack. As a result, Run Walxing was victorious against Great Master Feng Zhang through dishonest means. He took into account his opponent's merciful heart and immediately dashed to Yu Canghai to kill him. Firstly, the distance between that Yu person and Great Master Feng Zhang was great. That Great Master would not have been able to help in time. Secondly, none of the other school leaders had any deep feelings towards Yu Canghai that they would brave danger and stake their lives just to save him. So the only person who would try to save Yu Canghai was Great Master Feng Zhang. When the Shaolin abbot attacked him to free Yu Canghai, he did not try to block or parry Great Master Feng Zhang's strike, but seized his fatal acupoint instead. At that time, his plan reached its most dangerous point. The 2 palms of Great Master Feng Zhang that were aiming at the back of his head did not need to actually reach his head to kill him. The wind from the palms was fully capable of bursting his skull open. When he grabbed Yu Canghai, he had already staked his own life in this gamble. He gambled on this eminent Buddhist monk's merciful heart. When the Great Master Feng Zhang's 2 palms were about to reach the back of Run Walxing's head, the abbot took his palms back, which left half his body wide open. Oh, so Feng Zhang did not want to kill Run Walxing. So that's why he lost. He could have actually killed him, it seems. That's what you get for being merciful. In order to take back the 2 palms, Great Master Feng Zhang had to use the power from his whole body to do so. Even though this was done by a master, the internal energy in between the chest and stomach region was still left empty. When Run Walxing's grab and stab had reached Great Master Feng Zhang had actually wanted to transfer his power into his 2 palms and smash Run Walxing's head open, but the internal energy in his Dantian region was unable to go up. Priest Chongshu hastily supported the Great Master Feng Zhang and opened his sealed acupoint. He sighed. "Brother Abbot is too humane and was taken advantage of by an evildoer." "Amitofo. Shizu Run's mind is very keen, and he used his wits instead of brawn. This old man has lost," Feng Zhang said. Yue Buchun said loudly, Mr. Ren's conduct is traitorous and deceitful. Your win is not from upright and frank method. This is not the behavior of an upright gentleman. Xiang Wenqian laughed. Ha ha ha. In Midas, divine sun moon sect, how can there be any upright gentleman? If Chief Ren is an upright gentleman, he would have followed your bad example from a long time ago. Do you think we would be having this competition now, if he did? Yue Buchun was lost for words. Looks like there's some history there. Run Walxing was leaning his back on the wooden pillar and sluggishly striking his palm out to block every fist and kick from Zuo Lengqian. Zuo Lengqian was a proud person. If it was any other time, he would not have fought Run Walxing after his opponent had just fought with Shaolin School's #1 master. He knew that this was a cheap behavior and not something that a master of a school would do. Instead, this behavior was something that people would condemn. But Run Walxing used dishonest means and took advantage of Great Master Feng Zhang's kind heart to defeat him, and this made everyone really angry. When Zuo Lengqian disregarded his own safety and boldly attacked, everyone there regarded that he did this because of righteous anger, and did not care that he fought the enemy in succession without giving him a necessary pause. This was a once-in-a-thousand-years opportunity for Zuo Lengqian. Xiang Wenqian saw that Run Walxing did not have a chance to draw breath yet, so he rushed besides the pillar. Big leader Zuo, you're receiving such kindness. Aren't you ashamed? I'll fight with you. Zuo Lengqian replied, Wait till I flatten this Run first, then I'll fight with you. Do you think this old man here is afraid to fight you in a succession? With a shout, he struck a fist out towards Run Walxing. Run Walxing lifted his left hand up and coldly said, Brother Xiang, step back. Xiang Wenqian knew that the chief liked to outdo others, so he did not dare to disobey him. All right, I'll retreat for now, but this Zhuo is too shameless, so I want to kick his butt. With a kick, he flew out behind Zuo Lengqian and booted at his bottom. Zuo Lengqian was indignant. 2 against 1? He sneered as he slanted his body to avoid the kick. How could he have known that even though Xiang Wenqian raised his leg, he did not kick it out? He merely raised his leg up and lightly moved it. When Xiang Wenqian saw that Zuo Lengqian was fooled, he laughed loudly. Bastard grandson relies on numbers to win. He then leapt back to stand beside Ying Ying. As soon as he was let off, Zuo Lengqian resumed his attack against Run Walxing. When masters fight, the difference between them would be small. When Run Walxing was freed for a time, he drew a deep breath and regulated his qi smoothly. His vigor was greatly roused after this. Pung, 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 as he struck 3 palms out. Zuo Lengqian exerted his power to protect himself, and he was secretly shocked. I haven't met this old man for more than 10 years, and his skill has greatly improved. I must use all of my power today if I want to win. This was the second time these two people had fought. This fight was a fight to the death in front of the masters in Jianghu. The two of them regarded the winning and losing of this fight to be very serious, unlike the fight between Run Walxing and Great Master Feng Zhang, which was peaceful. As soon as Run Walxing was re-energized, all his moves were killing moves. Both his hands changed to knife forms, and he started hacking down. Zuo Lengqian kept changing his hand from fist into palm, into a grab, into a seize. This was the strong point of his palm move. The two people were getting quicker as they fought. Ling Huchong's eyes were just seeing patterns as he watched the fight from behind the wooden sign. When he was watching the fight between Run Walxing and Great Master Feng Zhang, he did not understand the essences of their martial art, but he unexpectedly also did not understand the extremely fast moves from these two people. It looks like Ling Huchong has a weak point, has a weakness, right? He's not good against people who can fight with palms. who can do their who have palm martial arts. He turned his eyes towards Ying Ying and noticed her snow-white complexion. She had her eyes lowered, and he could see her long eyelashes hanging down. There was no amazement or worry on her face. Xiang Wenxian's face was sometimes happy and sometimes worried. In a moment, it changed into doubt. In another moment, it changed into regret. In another moment, it changed into an angry glare. It was as if he was personally fighting this battle. Ling Hucheng thought, Brother Xiang's experience is much higher compared to Ying Ying. Looking at him being so nervous, I'm afraid it would be really hard for Mr. Ren to win this battle. He slowly turned his eyes to look at where his master and master wife were standing at. Besides them were Great Master Fang Zheng and Priest Chong Shu. The two people behind them were Taishan School's leader, Priest Tian Men, and Hangshan School's leader, Mr. Mo Da. Ever since Mr. Mo Da arrived inside the hall, he had not made any noise at all. When Ling Hucheng saw his thin and small body, he felt warmth in his heart, followed by the thought, Martial Sister Yi Lin and the rest of the Hangshan School's disciples have no more masters. I don't know how they'll cope with this. Yeah, so the Hangshan school, their 3 ranking sister nuns are gone, right? So they basically have no leaders. Qingcheng School's headmaster, Priest Yu, was standing at the back wall with his hand grasping his sword handle and was looking indignant. Standing by the west was a beggar with white hair. He was the beggar clan's leader, Xie Feng. The other person was wearing a green gown, and his appearance was quite natural. He was Kunlun School's leader, Jiang Kun One Sword, Zhen Shanzi. These 9 people were the present Orthodox school's most powerful masters. If the 9 of them were not fully concentrating on the fight, even if he had used all of his power to hold his breath, it was more than likely that he would have been discovered a long time ago. He thought, the gathering below has so many masters. Especially Master and Master Wife are also there. Then there are Great Master Fang Zheng, Wudong's leader, and Mr. Mo Da, the 3 seniors I respect completely. But I'm being really disrespectful hiding here and eavesdropping to what they're saying. Even though I was here before them, I've eavesdropped to what they were saying. If any of them felt my presence here, then I'd be really ashamed. He hoped that Runwoo Singh would quickly win this fight, and thus win the best 2 out of 3 fights, and go down the mountain with Ying Ying. When Great Master Fang Zheng and the rest of the masters had gone out of the hall, he would then hurry down the mountain to meet Ying Ying. At the thought of meeting Ying Ying, his chest felt hot, and his ears were also feeling hot. He pondered, from now on, are Ying Ying and I really going to be man and wife? Oh. He's already thinking about marriage. She treated me with passion and righteousness, but I... These last few days, although he had been thinking of Ying Ying, he had always thought of protecting her because of her kindness towards him. He wanted to help her get out of her imprisonment and declare to everyone in Jianghu that it was him who adored her and that it was really not her idea. Thus, it would stop the warriors of Jianghu from ridiculing her and causing her to be embarrassed. Every time Ying Ying's image appeared in his mind, there was no feeling of happiness or warmth in his heart. It was very different with the feeling of warmth when he remembered his little martial sister, Yue Lingshan. There was actually a bit of fear when he thought of Ying Ying. When he first met Ying Ying, he thought that she was an old granny, and he respected her and felt grateful towards her. Later, after he saw her lift her hands to kill people and commanded those groups of heroes, it was unavoidable that his respect was mixed with fear. Only after he found out recently that she had some feelings for him, that this little bit of fear in his heart started to gradually lighten. And later, when he found out that she was willing to give her own life to Shaolin to save him, his feelings for her became full of gratitude. But even though this feeling of gratitude was deep, he did not have any thoughts to be intimate with her, and only wished that he could repay her kindness. Hearing Runwoo Singh say that he was his son-in-law, he felt uneasy in his heart. Just now, when he saw her magnificent beauty, he only felt that the distance between them was far. After looking at Ying Ying for a few times, he did not dare to take a look again. He saw Xiang Wentian made a fist with both of his hands, and his two eyes were wide open. Xiang Wentian was looking intently at Runwoo Singh and Zhuo Langchan. He saw Zhuo Langchan had already pulled back to one corner of the hall, while Runwoo Singh was still hacking repeatedly. Each of his palms was like a big hatchet, and the power was astonishing. Zhuo Langchan was completely in an unfavorable situation. His two arms could not attack, as he kept withdrawing them as soon as they had gone out for 1 foot. It seemed that he was only defending and not attacking. Suddenly, Runwoo Singh shouted loudly and pushed both of his palms towards Zhuo Langchan's chest. The four palms clashed, and Zhuo Langchan hit the wall behind him. Dust from the top fell down from the impact. The four palms did not separate. Ling Huchong felt his body shook, and it looked as if the wooden sign he was hiding behind was about to fall down. He felt alarmed. Martial Uncle Zhuo is in trouble. They're both competing inner energy. Runwoo Singh would use the arts of essence absorbing to absorb his inner energy. After some time, Martial Uncle Zhuo will definitely lose. He saw Zhuo Langchan pull his right palm back and unexpectedly only use his left palm to resist his opponent's palm, while extending two fingers in his right hand to poke Runwoo Singh. Runwoo Singh shouted in alarm and leapt back immediately. Zhuo Langchan stabbed again with his right hand. He successively stabbed 3 times, and Runwoo Singh stepped back 3 times. Great Master Fang Zhang, Priest Chongshu, and the rest of the people were surprised. I've heard that Runwoo Singh's art of essence absorbing will absorb the opponent's energy without exception, but how come when their 4 palms connected, Zhuo Langchan was unexpectedly unharmed? Could it be that his Songshan school's energy cultivation does not fear the art of essence absorbing? All the masters looking at the fight were in amazement, but Runwoo Singh was even more astonished. More than 10 years ago, when Runwoo Singh fought with Zhuo Langchan, he did not have to use his art of essence absorbing before gaining the advantage. He was able to stop Zhuo Langchan then, even though at that fight he had... He was able to stop Zhuo Langchan then, even though at that fight he had a sudden pain in his heart and found it hard to control his power. He had been truly frightened, as he knew it was because of the art of essence absorbing, reversing. Under normal circumstances, he could have calmly meditated to regulate his energy. However, how could he do that with the enemy right in front of him? He had been at a loss as to what to do when he suddenly saw 2 people appearing behind Zhuo Langchan. They were Zhuo Langchan's martial brothers, Tower Holding Palm Ding Mian and Great Songyang Palm Fei Bin. This is him telling of the past, by the way, not the present. Runwoo Singh had immediately leapt away and laughed loudly. We agreed to fight one-on-one, but you secretly have some helpers. A gentleman doesn't want to be disadvantaged, so I'll meet up with you some other time. Today, Grandpa won't accompany you anymore. If his opponent had not voluntarily ceased the fight, Zhuo Langchan's loss would have been guaranteed. It had been such a good turn of events for Zhuo Langchan that he had not dared to refute his opponent's accusation by saying something like, "To have helpers is not the way of the hero." He had been afraid that Runwoo Singh might have gotten angry and started fighting again. It would have been so inappropriate for Ding Mian and Fei Bin to enter the fight and help, as it could have ruined his good reputation. Instead, he had immediately said, "Who told you not to bring some of your devil sex's helper?" Runwoo Singh had laughed coldly and left. Thus, the victory or defeat of that previous fight to the death was not decided, but they both had known in their hearts that each of their martial arts had a big flaw. They had been lucky not to lose to each other, and to be able to train hard after the fight to correct the flaws. Especially Run Wo Xing, as he had known that the art of essence absorbing had a secret danger attached to the skill, just like gangrene to the bone. He had used the art of essence absorbing to absorb many opponents' energies when the opponents were from different schools, and they all had different energies. Because he did not have the method to harmonize them into one in the past, the various energies had frequently come out unexpectedly. His own energy had already been very powerful, so when he had felt these different energies surging and swirling, he had immediately suppressed them before they became dangerous. In his first confrontation with an extremely powerful master, he had used up a great amount of his energy, and as a result, his own internal energy, which had long suppressed the others, had been weakened. When fronted with a powerful enemy, he not only had to contend with their attacks, but also worry about his own internal problem. That had been an extremely difficult dilemma for Run Wo Xing. So it seems Run Wo Xing had kind of a similar issue that Ling Hu Cheng previously had, right? And apparently, if you have too much qi, too much qi from different people in your body, it causes problems in your body. So when this guy is absorbing like a bunch of people's qi, it had been causing him a lot of issues. Later on, he had thought deeply to search for a method to make uniform all these internal energies. When concentrating fully on this, even the most intelligent hero would not be aware of the rebellion happening under him. In the end, he was imprisoned by Dongfang Bu Bai. While he was imprisoned under the West Lake for 10 years, his mind was focused on fixing the art of essence absorbing until he finally comprehended the right method to suppress all the various energies from different schools, that there would no longer be the danger of the art of essence absorbing reversing. At the current fight, when Run Wo Xing had not won after a while, he used the art of essence absorbing when their two palms clashed. But unexpectedly, he found that Zhuo Langchan's internal energy was completely empty, and he did not know where it went to. Run Wo Xing was greatly startled that he couldn't absorb his opponent's energy. It was incredibly strange. Just before then, he was also not able to absorb Fang Zhang's energy, but it was because in a blink of an eye, Fang Zhang was able to hide his energy without a trace and made his art of essence absorbing powerless. Not only had he not experienced this before, even in his dream, he would never have thought that this kind of strange matter could happen. He used the art of essence absorbing a few more times, but he could not feel where Zhuo Langchan's internal energy was. When he saw the fierce stab by Zhuo Langchan, he immediately retreated 3 steps and changed his moves. He then used a chopping move whose power was unrivaled. Zhuo Langchan changed into defense. The two people had fought for 20 to 30 more moves when Run Wo Xing's left hand chopped down, while Zhuo Langchan's right hand stabbed towards Run Wo Xing's left rib. Run Wo Xing saw that the power of this poke was very fierce. He thought, this poke really has no inner power. In fact, he had deliberately revealed that empty spot, allowing Zhuo Langchan to poke it. At the same time, he diffused his art of essence absorbing from his chest. He thought, you have a deep inner energy, but you're not letting my art of essence absorb it. But this poke you use to attack me, if it has no inner energy, then it would be just like an itch to me. But if it was laced with any energy, then I'd absorb it. As this thought flashed in his mind, Zhuo Langchan's finger poked his Tian Qi acupoint. The spectators all cried out in surprise. Zhuo Langchan's finger only stayed on Run Wolxing's chest for a short time. Run Wolxing immediately transferred his whole power. Sure enough, his opponent's energy was like a river dam broken open as it rushed into his Tianqi acupoint. He felt really happy and intensified his effort to absorb his opponent's energy faster. Suddenly, his body faltered. He slowly stepped back one step at a time. He did not say anything and was staring at Zhuo Langchan. His body trembled, and he was now motionless, just like when people had their acupoints sealed. Ooh, so what happened? Alright, I need a break. Alright, give me a 5-minute break, alright? I'll be right back. Alright, I'm back. I'm back. So they've been fighting for a while. Looks like Run Wolxing and Zhuo Langchan had a fight years ago. Okay, and looks like back then they were evenly matched. Now in their second fight, it looks like Zhuo Langchan had found a counter to Run Wolxing's like chi absorbing powers, right? Now he didn't know that he didn't know that his powers had any counter to it, right? He hadn't seen anything like that before, but now in this battle, this guy has a counter to him, and the abbot of the Shaolin Temple also had a counter to him. So it just goes to show you got to keep improving your skills, guys. You got to keep improving your skills. Ying Ying frighteningly called out, "Dad!" and rushed to support him. She felt his hand was ice cold. She turned her head around and called out, "Uncle Xiang!" Xiang Wenxian rushed in front of Run Wolxing and pushed his chest a few times. "Hey!" Run Wolxing reacted. He was looking angry and his complexion was pale. "Very good. I've never experienced this kind of game before. Let's compete again." Zhuo Langchan just shook his head. Yue Buchun said, "The winner and loser have been determined. What's there to compete against? Didn't Headmaster Zhuo seal Mr. Run's Tanqi acupoint?" Ren Wolxing shouted, "Peh! Good! I was swindled, so we'll just count this fight as my loss." Zhuo Langchan's earlier technique was most hazardous. He had accumulated polar ice energy for over a decade and transferred all that energy into his index finger at that moment. He risked the danger of losing a lot of his internal strength and allowed Run Wolxing to absorb his internal power. Not only did he allow him to absorb it, he even forced it towards Run Wolxing by pouring it through his acupoint. Zhuo Langchan's polar ice energy was similar to the boreal finger of Plum Manor's Mr. Blackwhite. Both were extreme yin and cold martial arts. However, Zhuo Langchan's internal energy was a lot deeper. In a few moments, Ren Wolxing was frozen solid. Zhuo Langchan took advantage of this moment when the art of essence absorbing stopped by transferring his internal energy and sealing Ren Wolxing's acupoint. Could it be from the Lin family? You think so? Oh my god. Oh. Interesting theory. Usually, you would only see acupoints sealed in a fight between second or third class fighters in Wulin. When masters fought, they would never use such an ordinary martial art. But Zhuo Langchan was willing to part with a large amount of his internal energy and use the second or third class martial art method to win. Even though this method... So how much of this polar ice energy does he have? Because it says like he's been accumulating it for over a decade. So like, did he just use most of it, or what? Does he still have some left? Even though this method was dishonest, without an extremely good internal energy, it would be very difficult to accomplish. I don't know, man. That method doesn't sound dishonest at all. Like that's, I think you won perfectly fairly, right? Xiang Wenxian knew that even though Zhuo Langchan had won, his internal energy had been exhausted, and it would probably take several months for him to recover. He immediately said, "Just then, Headmaster Zhuo said that you would fight me after you had flattered Chief Ren. Please, begin now." Great Master Feng Zheng, Priest Chongshu, and the rest of the people understood what he meant. After Zhuo Langchan had poked Ren Wuxing, his face was wretchedly pale, and he had not dared to say a single word. It was obvious that he had used up a lot of his internal energy. If the two of them fought, not only would Zhuo Langchan lose, after many moves he would be killed by Xiang Wenxian. But Zhuo Langchan really did say those words before when Xiang Wenxian challenged him. Would he actually eat his own words now? Everyone was hesitating on what to do when Yue Buchun said, "We already said before that for these 3 fights, each side will choose for themselves on who will go out to fight, and not the other side. Didn't Chief Ren agree to this? Chief Ren is a big hero, a grand hero. How can we not regard what he said?" Xiang Wenxian coldly laughed and said, "Mr. Yue's dispute is really good and caused other people to admire you. But this word, gentleman, there's something that doesn't fit. This kind of talking aimlessly resembled something a small person would do." Yue Buchun replied indifferently, "From the point of view of a gentleman, everyone in this world is a gentleman. From the point of view of a small person, there's no small person in this world." Zhuo Langchan slowly dragged his feet back a few steps till his back was on the pillar. He was having difficulty just to stand up, let alone having to fight. Priest Chongshu moved a couple of steps forward and said, "I've heard that..." Wait, how did I do this guy's old voice again? Oh, he spent the last 10 years of his life eating nothing but ice cream? Oh, is that how you do it? Oh, I might have the polar ice, whatever you call it. I might have polar ice energy. "I've heard that Left Protector Xiang is called Old Heavenly King, and your abilities are earth-shaking. This poor Taoist is ashamed to be the headmaster of Wudang. In this fight between the orthodox schools and your respectable sect, I haven't done anything. I feel really ashamed. It'll be lucky today if I can fight with..." Not doing a good old person voice today. "It'll be lucky. It'll be lucky today if I can fight..." No, that's too old. "It'll be lucky today if I can fight with Old Heavenly King. It would be a real glorious favor." He was the leader of a martial arts school, but he was talking to Xiang Wenxian in this way. Isn't that giving the opponent too much credit? It was hard for Xiang Wenxian to refuse this, so he said, "I have to respectfully obey your order. I respect Chief Chongshu's unrivaled Tai Chi sword art. I will risk my life to accompany you and reveal my shortcomings." Xiang Wenxian cupped his fist and retreated a couple of steps. Priest Chongshu also cupped his fist, returning the propriety. The two of them stood opposite each other. They were looking at each other for a while without drawing their swords. Suddenly, Ren Wuxing shouted, "Wait! Brother Xiang, step back, and drew the sword on his waist. Everyone there was astonished. He already fought 2 masters, and his internal energy has been greatly harmed. Now he wants to fight a 3rd time against Priest Changshu. Zhuo Lengchan was surprised. He thought, my 10 years of hard work on this polar ice energy was poured into his Tianqi acupoint. Even if it were someone with a martial art 10 times better than him, would need around 6 to 8 hours to recover. How can he fight another person after just a short while? How could anyone know that Run Wo-sing was actually feeling like there were dozens of knives slashing and stabbing in his Dantian region? He was using all of his power just to talk calmly and steadily while not revealing the pain he was under. Priest Changshu smiled. Chief Run wants to grant some lesson. We've already said before that both sides will decide for themselves who will go out to fight. If Chief Run wants to grant some lesson, he won't disobey what we've agreed upon. It's just that this poor Taoist's advantage is too large. I've already staked my life in fighting 2 masters before. If I want to fight against Priest again, then I would be looking down at your Wudang School's sword arts' hundreds of years of reputation. Even though I'm mad, I wouldn't do this. Priest Changshu felt happy to hear this and nodded his head. Many thanks. When he first saw Run Wo-sing draw his sword out, he hesitated. If he prevailed against Run Wo-sing after they had fought him in succession, it would be said that it was not honorable. However, if he lost, then the Wudang School would have no face to stand in Jianghu anymore. When he heard that Run Wo-sing was not going to fight, he was relieved. Run Wo-sing continued. Priest Changshu is a new force in your respectable side, so we'll also get a new force for our side. Then he looked up and shouted, Little brother Ling Hu Chang, please come down. Ah, crap. Everyone was greatly surprised and followed Run Wo-sing's eyes in looking up towards the wooden signage. Ling Hu Chang was even more confounded. He was now in a very difficult position and did not know what to do for a short moment. But seeing that he could not hide anymore, he leapt down. He then knelt down in front of Great Master Fang Zhang and kowtowed a few times to pay his respect. I rushed into your treasured temple without permission. This really is a big sin. I'm ready to receive the abbot's punishment. Fang Zhang laughed before answering. So it's young hero Ling Hu. I heard young heroes' even breathing and sensed that your internal energy is profound. I felt it was really strange. I didn't know which master was visiting my humble temple. Please rise. This is too big a propriety. I don't deserve it. As he was speaking, he was joining his 2 palms together, returning the propriety. Ling Hu Chang thought, so he already knew for some time that I was hiding behind that wooden sign. Beggar Clan's leader Xia Feng suddenly said, Ling Hu Chang, come and take a look at these words. Ling Hu Chang stood up and followed his finger to look at 3 sentences behind a wooden pillar. The first sentence was, someone's behind the signage. The second sentence was, I'll grab him down. The third sentence was, wait, this person's internal energy is orthodox and demonical. Don't know yet whether he's friend or foe. Every word was carved deeply and was clearly seen on the wooden pillar. They were written by Great Master Fang Zhang and Xia Feng by using their fingers. Ling Hu Chang was alarmed and impressed. Oh, everybody already knew that there was someone behind the sign. And they wrote down the words to inform everyone else on the wooden pillars. He thought, Great Master Feng Zheng detected my very weak breathing and was able to distinguish the origin of my martial arts. He's really a divine person. He then immediately gave his respect to everyone around. When seniors came to the hall because I was afraid, I didn't dare to come down and pay my respects. Please, forgive me. He believed that his master's face must be looking furious at the moment, so he did not dare to look at his eyes. Wait, define propriety? Like following protocol, like being polite to your and paying respect to your elders, things like that. Like acting like a proper gentleman or proper like martial arts person. Yeah, so the state or quality of conforming to conventionally accepted standards or behavior or morals. So, yeah, showing decorum, respectability. Yeah, so being. Xia Feng laughed. You were afraid like a thief. What, are you trying to steal from the Shaolin Temple? I heard that young Lady Run was detained at Shaolin Temple, so I bravely came here to get her out, Ling Huchang replied. Xia Feng laughed. So you came here to steal your wife. This is not afraid like a thief, but is called extremely daring in lewdness. Ling Huchang replied with a straight face. Young Lady Run treated me very kindly. Even if my body is grounded to dust and my bones are chopped into pieces, I'm still willing. Xie Feng let out a long sigh. What a pity, what a pity. A very promising youth's future is harmed because of a woman. If you don't abandon your evil way, then this honorable position of Huashan School's leader, do you think it would still be able to come to your hand? I can't decide what kind of voice to give this Baker Clan Xia Feng guy. Runwal Singh said loudly, What's so rare about being a leader of Huashan? When I die, the position of chief in the Divine Sun Moon sect, wouldn't that be my lucky son-in-law's hand? Wouldn't that be in my lucky son-in-law's hand? Ling Huchang was startled and tremblingly said, Cannot. Renwa Singh laughed. All right, no need for this idle talk anymore. Chang'er, why don't you get some lesson from this headmaster of Wudang's divine sword? Priest Changshu's sword art is using soft to overcome hard and has this circling motion. It's very rare in the world, so you must be really careful. Oh, no one knows that they already fought and he already won a long time ago. Or not a long time ago, like, sounds like a couple of days ago. He called him Chang'er. This was really regarding him as his son-in-law already. Ling Huchang silently examined the situation. So remember the suffix after a name is like, it's like a term of endearment. And something you would say to your son or your daughter. Ling Huchang silently examined the situation. Both sides had now won one fight each, so this third fight would determine whether Ying Ying would be able to go down the mountain. He had already fought Priest Changshu before, and knew that he could win against him. In order to save Ying Ying, he must enter the fight. He turned his body around and knelt in front of Priest Changshu to pay his respect. Priest Changshu hastily extended his hand to ask him to get up. Then he oddly asked, But why such a big propriety? Ling Huchang answered, I really respect the priest, but under these circumstances I'm forced to ask the priest to grant me a lesson. My heart feels uneasy about this. Priest Changshu laughed loudly and said, "Little brother's propriety is too excessive." Ling Hucheng stood up, and Run Walsing passed over the long sword to him. Ling Hucheng took the sword in his hand. Then, with the sword pointing down, he leaned his body forward. Priest Changshu lifted his eyes to look at the sky outside the hall, and was lost in thought, thinking about Ling Hucheng's sword art. Everyone there saw him not moving, as if he was meditating, and they all felt that this was really strange. After a long time, Priest Changshu let out a long sigh. "We don't need to fight this battle. The four of you can go down the mountain." When these words were spoken, everyone was astonished. Exalted, Ling Hucheng bowed towards Priest Changshu. Xie Feng said, "Priest, what do you mean by these words?" Priest Changshu, that's a good voice for the beggar clan leader, right? A little gruff. Priest Changshu replied, "I can't think of a way to break his sword art. This battle, this poor priest admits my defeat." Xie Feng said, "The two of you haven't fought yet." Changshu told everyone, "Many days ago, at the foot of Mount Wudang, I've already fought him for more than 300 moves, and I lost. If we fight it today, I would still lose." Fang Zhang and the rest of them asked, "Did this really happen?" "Little brother Ling Hu's sword art was passed down by Feng Qingyang, Senior Feng. I'm not his match," Changshu said. After he said this, he smiled slightly and stepped back. Run Walsing laughed loudly and said, "Priest is very open-minded. This is really admirable. At first, this old man here only admired you by 1/2. Now, I admire you 7/10." He said 7/10, but it was, after all, still not full. He then folded his hands in salute towards Great Master Feng Zhang and said, "Great Master Feng Zhang, we'll meet again some other time." Ling Hucheng walked up in front of his master and his master wife and kowtowed to them. Yue Buchun leaned his body to avoid it and coldly said, "You flatter me." Madame Yue's heart was sore, and tears filled her eyes. Ling Hucheng went to Mr. Moda to pay his respect. He knew that Mr. Moda would not want other people to know about their contact in the past, so he only kowtowed 3 times and did not say anything. One of Run Walsing's hands was leading Ying Ying, and his other hand was leading Ling Hucheng. He laughed. "Let's go." He strode purposefully towards the door of the hall. Xie Feng, Zhen Shanzi, Yu Canghai, Priest Tianmen, and the other people were not as good as Priest Changshu in terms of martial art, since Changshu already admitted that he was not a match for Ling Hucheng's sword art. Even though they did not believe him, they also did not dare to rashly go up to fight and bring shame to themselves. Just as Run Walsing was able to step outside of the hall, they suddenly heard Yue Buchun shout, "Wait!" Oh, crap. Oh. Oh, did he just reveal who Ling Hucheng learned the Dugu technique from? Oh, maybe you're right. You might be right. That he just revealed that Ling Hucheng learned his martial arts from Feng Qingyang. Yeah, I don't think anyone knew before. No? You can't remember what Mr. Moda did? So Mr. Moda, yeah, he's the guy who played the Huqin, the thing. He had the sword inside his Huqin. And if you remember at the very beginning, right? When Liu Changfeng was doing his hand washing ceremony, Mr. Moda is the leader of Hangshan, so the leader of that sect, right? And he killed the one dude from the Songshan school, and the one dude died by this blood fountain. He had a blood fountain death. Yeah, that was done. Yeah, he was killed by Mr. Moda. And Moda also was taking care of the nuns in the Hangshan school in order to let Ling Hucheng go towards the Shaolin school to save Ying Ying. What's up, Bigfoot? Ren Walsing turned his head around and asked, "What?" "Priest Changshu is an educated man. He doesn't want to fight someone with a narrow mind. We haven't fought out this third fight yet. Ling Hucheng, I'll accompany you for this fight." Ling Hucheng was surprised, and his whole body started to shake. His mouth was chattering as he said, "Master, how can..." But Yue Buchun was calm when he replied, "Other people said that you've taken some pointers from martial uncle Feng and received the essence of swordsmanship from the Huashan school. It seems that even I'm not your match. Even though you've already been expelled from Huashan, but in Jianghu, you're still setting up your reputation using our school's sword art. Because I am unable to teach you, all the seniors of the Orthodox schools are exasperated by you, unworthy youth. If I don't take care of this, then do I let other people take responsibility? Today, if I don't kill you, then you'll kill me." No, not good. As he said these last few words, his voice became fierce. He then drew his sword out and shouted, "The two of us no longer have a master-disciple relationship. On guard." Ling Hucheng took a step back again and said, "Disciple doesn't dare." Yue Buchun thrust his sword towards Ling Hucheng's chest. Ling Hucheng leaned to the side, avoiding it. Yue Buchun followed this with another 2 thrusts, which Ling Hucheng also avoided. Ling Hucheng's longsword was still pointing at the ground, and he had not used it to block the thrusts. Yue Buchun said, "You already gave me 3 moves. Consider that as finishing the respect we have. Ready your sword." I know, right? Damn Yue Buchun. He's really not cool. Ren Walsing said, "Chong'er, you're still not returning any move. Do you really want to die here?" Ling Hucheng answered, "Yes," and immediately lifted his sword up. In this fight, should he let Master win, or should he win over Master? If he deliberately held back and lost, even if he received heavy injuries, he wouldn't care, but Ren Walsing, Xian Wenxian, and Ying Ying would all be detained on Mount Shaoshi for 10 years. Great Master Feng Zhang was surely a righteous, eminent monk, but there was no guarantee that Zhuo Langchan and the rest of the Shaolin schools would not harm the 3 of them. In this 10 years of imprisonment, it would be very hard to say whether they would be able to keep their lives. But he also thought about how he had been by himself since he was young, and it was Master and Master Wife who brought him up. He considered them as his own parents, and he had not repaid them for their kindness yet. How could he defeat Master in front of all the world's heroes and make him lose face and reputation? As he was hesitating on what to do, Yue Buchun had already attacked him with more than 20 moves. Ling Hucheng only used the Huashan sword moves previously taught by his master to block. He didn't dare use the Dugu 9 swords, as each of its moves was an attacking method meant to harm the opponent. After he studied the Dugu 9 swords, his knowledge had greatly advanced, and furthermore, his internal energy was abundant. Although he was only using a common Huashan sword art, his swords' power and class naturally differed by a lot compared to the past. Yue Buchun was attacking continuously, but he had not managed to harm him yet. The spectators saw how Ling Huchang was wielding his sword, and they naturally understood that he was intentionally giving way. When Ren Wuxing and Xian Wenqian looked at this, both their faces showed worries. Both of them remembered that day at the Plum Manor on Hangzhou's Mount Gu when Ren Wuxing invited Ling Huchang to join the Divine Sun Moon sect. He was giving him the right protector position, and later on the position of chief. Ren Wuxing would also impart to him the secret of how to harmonize the various internal energies in his body after using the art of essence absorbing. But this youth was hardly moved by this offer and was very loyal to his school. At this time, seeing how he was so respectful towards his former master and master wife, it seemed that Yue Buchun if Yue Buchun were to stab him to death, Ling Huchang would even be willing to accept this in his heart. He was actually only using defensive moves, so how would he be able to win? It was apparent that Ling Huchang had already decided not to win over his master, especially since they were fighting in front of so many accomplished heroes. He would have abandoned his sword and admitted defeat a long time ago if it were not for the fact that Ying Ying, Ren Wuxing, and Xian Wenqian would be imprisoned on Mount Shaoshi if he lost. The two people, Ren and Xiang, were pacing back and forth, not knowing what to do. They looked at the fight again and they thought, what should we do? Ren Wuxing turned his head towards Ying Ying and whispered, go in front. Ying Ying understood her dad's intention well. He was afraid that Ling Huchang would take into consideration the kindness of his former master and would intentionally lose the fight. He wanted her to go in front so that Ling Huchang would be able to see her and be reminded how she had treated him, so he would use his power and gain victory. She lightly groaned, but did not move. After some time, when Ren Wuxing saw Ling Huchang keep retreating, he became even more worried and again told Ying Ying, go in front. Ying Ying still did not move and groaned again, not answering him. She thought in her heart, you already understand how I treated you. If you think I'm more important, then you'd help me go down the mountain, and you'd be able to gain victory by yourself. If you think your master is more important, even if I pulled your sleeve and cry, it would still be useless. Why must I stand in front of you to remind you of this? She deeply felt that it was natural for two people to love each other. If she had to give some signs before Ling Huchang would consider her love for him, then that was just too tasteless. Ling Huchang was not restricted to using Huashan's sword art when blocking each of his master's attacks. If he had actually counterattacked, Yue Buchun would have been forced to throw away his sword and admit defeat a long time ago. He had seen a lot of flaws in his master's sword moves, but he had not even attacked once. Yue Buchun understood Ling Huchang's heart from the beginning, so he attacked continuously using his Divine Violet Twilight art in conjunction with his Huashan sword art. He already knew that Ling Huchang would not attack back, so he kept advancing with all of his attacks and did not care about the flaws in his own sword art anymore. As he did this, the power of his sword art had now greatly multiplied. The spectators saw that Yue Buchun's art was powerful, and he had also received an advantage, but he had not been able to stab Ling Huchang from the beginning. They also saw that when Ling Huchang wielded his sword, sometimes there was a move and sometimes there was no move. When there was no move, it looked as if his longsword was just blocking in a disorderly fashion, but looked marvelous at the same time. He only had to touch Yue Buchun's sword lightly to protect himself. The more they watched, the more they admired him. They all thought, Priest Changshu said that his sword art is inferior. Seems like he didn't just make that up. Yue Buchun had been fighting for a long time without stopping, and he was becoming impatient. Suddenly he thought, Hey, this is not good. This little traitor doesn't want other people to say that he doesn't know how to repay the kindness of other people. So he kept on fighting me. Even though he's not attacking, he's still making it difficult for me to gain victory. Everyone here is a master and is very observant. At this time, they must have observed a long time ago that this little traitor is purposefully giving way to me. I've been continuously attacking him from the start. What would become of my dignity? How can this be considered as the behavior of a school leader? This little traitor wants to give me some difficulties and force me to give way and voluntarily admit defeat. He quickly transferred his divine art of violet twilight into his sword. His sword hacked down, splitting the air. Ling Huchang slanted his body and avoided the chop. Yue Buchun circled his sword and slashed towards Ling Huchang's waist. Ling Huchang leapt above the sword. Yue Buchun flicked his sword upwards, aiming towards the back of his body. The change in this sword move was extremely fast. There were no eyes at the back of Ling Huchang's body, and the situation was very difficult for him to avoid. Everyone gasped in surprise. Ling Huchang was in midair, and there was nowhere for him to step on to launch his body forward. It was also too late for him to use his sword to block the strike. But then they saw him using his sword to hit the wooden pillar. But then they saw him using his sword to hit the wooden pillar in front of him. Borrowing this sword, he jumped to the back of the pillar, and with a pooh sound, Yue Buchun's longsword penetrated the wooden pillar. The sword was pliable, but with his internal energy injected into it, the longsword went through the pillar, and the point of the sword stopped just inches away from Ling Huchang's body. Yeah, I know. The master has a really bad opinion, a really low opinion of Ling Huchang. Always thinking he's up to some trick. Ah! Everyone gasped in surprise. The sound of this cry was full of happiness, delight, and praise. Unexpectedly, everyone was happy for Ling Huchang. They admired him for the skillful and clever way he avoided the attack. They were also celebrating the fact that Yue Buchun did not manage to stab him. Yue Buchun had executed his unique skill, the three linking strike, but was still unable to hit Ling Huchang. Furthermore, he felt angry when he heard the spectators calling out in compassion towards his opponent. This life-snatching, three-linking immortal sword was a move from the Huashan School's sword branch, which he, a Qi branch disciple, did not initially know. In those years when the two branches... Oh, that's interesting. He's using a high-level sword branch martial arts. Which is what you're not supposed to do when you're part of the Qi branch. In those years when the two branches were destroying each other, disciples of the sword branch used this sword art to kill many good fighters from the Qi branch. At the same time, disciples from the Qi branch were also slaughtering the disciples from the sword branch. After they had taken the leadership of the Huashan school, the good fighters from the Qi branch attentively studied in detail these three advanced sword moves: life-snatching, three-linking immortal sword. When they thought of the power of these three linking moves on that day, there was still lingering fear in their hearts. During the study of this three linking sword art, everyone said that this sword art belonged to the demonical path. But as they were seeking the exquisiteness of this sword art, they all forgot their own school's difficult Qi drives the sword principle. They only said that the sword move was beautiful, but in their hearts, they actually really admired it. Seeing Yue Buchun and Ling Huchang fighting, Madame Yue was full of grief. When she saw her husband suddenly using these three moves, she thought in her heart, "In those years, the two branches wanted to destroy each other because of the dispute about the importance of Qi cultivation and sword art. He's the head disciple of the Qi branch, but at this moment, he suddenly used the move from the sword branch. If an outsider saw through this, wouldn't they contemptibly mock us? He must have no choice but to use the move. But he's clearly not Chang Er's match. Why is he still continuing to fight? She wanted to ask them to stop, but this matter concerned a lot of people, and not just her own school. She wanted to go forward, but changed her mind. She grasped the handle of her sword, and her heart was worried to death. Yue Buchun lifted his right hand and pulled his sword out from the pillar. Ling Huchang did not move and stood still behind the pillar. Yue Buchun only saw how he stayed behind the wooden pillar, looking like he was hiding from further attacks. He regarded that this happened because Ling Huchang was afraid of him, and also because Ling Huchang respected his reputation. The two people studied each other. Ling Huchang said in a low voice, "Disciple isn't your match. We don't need to fight anymore." Yue Buchun uttered a Ren Wuxing said, "There can be no winner and loser in this fight between master and disciple. Great Master Abbot, there's no winner and loser for these 3 fights. This old man will pay for my sin. How about if we stop this?" Madame Yue relaxed and inwardly sighed. "We clearly lost this fight. Chief Ran said this to give us face. In this case, it's best if we stop." Fang Jiang said, "Ami Tuo. What Shizu Ran said saves everyone from injury and shows your wisdom. This old monk doesn't." The word mind had not been said when Zuo Langchan interrupted. "Then we're going to let these 4 go down the mountain and let them harm the Jianghu and massacre the innocents? Let their 8 palms be covered in the blood of hundreds and thousands of people and destroy everything good in this world. Should we still regard Martial Brother Yue as the headmaster of the Huashan school?" Fang Zhang hesitated when a "ch" sound was heard. Yue Buchun had gone around to the back of the pillar and thrust his sword towards Ling Huchang. Fast as lightning, Ling Huchang avoided the thrust. After many moves, the two of them were back in the middle of the hall. Yue Buchun wielded his sword and attacked quickly, advancing at every opportunity. Ling Huchang smothered these attacks by either blocking or avoiding. After more than 20 moves, Ren Wuxing laughed. "To decide who wins this fight, we'll just have to wait for 7 to 8 days and see who dies from starvation first. I'm sure we'll find out by then." Everyone felt that even though what he said was an exaggeration, it's likely that if they kept on fighting like this, it would be hard to get a result within a few hours. Ren Wuxing thought, "This old fellow Yue just thickened his face and kept on fighting. He's in an invincible position and couldn't possibly lose. But if Chang Er made a slight mistake, then everything would be spoiled. The longer this fight goes, the more harmful it would be to us. I must say something to incite him." He then said, "Brother Xiang, we've really widened our view today in Shaolin Temple." Xiang Wentian replied, "Right, all of the top masters from Wulin are gathering here. Among them, there's one who is better than the rest." "Which one?" "This person learned a divine martial arts, and other people will admire him when they see him." "What divine martial art is this?" "This person is learning the Golden Face Cover, Iron Face Divine Art," Ren Wuxing told him. "Subordinate has heard about Golden Bell Cover, Metal Gown, but I've never heard of this Golden Face Cover, Iron Face." "Other people's is Golden Bell Cover, Metal Gown martial art makes one's body impervious to saber. This person's is Golden Face Cover, Iron Face Divine Art will make the face hard when practiced." "This Golden Face Cover, Iron Face Divine Art, which school or sect has this martial art?" "They said that this martial art is no small matter. It was created in the West Mountain of Huashan by the headmaster of the Huashan school, Jiang Hu's is venerable gentleman's sword, Yue Bu Chun, Mr. Yue. I heard that gentleman's sword, Yue Bu Chun's internal energy art is unrivaled, and his sword art is unmatched. As expected, it wasn't just an empty reputation. This golden face cover, iron face divine art, after it's learned, then your face will be impervious to sabers. Is this right? This move has a lot of usefulness. We're not disciples of the Huashan school, so we wouldn't know the secret to this art. Mr. Yue already created this kind of divine martial art, then his name would be known throughout Jianghu and would forever be praised as an immortal. Of course, when we later meet with anyone from the Huashan school, we must be really careful with their iron face divine art, Ren Wuxing said. Yes, subordinate will remember this in my heart. So they're making fun of Yue Bu Chun, like, saying that he can't possibly lose because his opponent is not willing to let him lose face. So he has this iron face tech. That means he has this iron face technique. The two of them were talking back and forth like they were the actors in a comical drama, but there was a hint of ridicule in their tones towards Yue Bu Chun. Yu Changhai was giggling non-stop, taking pleasure in other people's misfortunes. Madame Yue was blushing furiously, but it seemed that Yue Bu Chun didn't hear any of these conversations. He thrust his sword and Ling Huchang avoided it by slanting to the left. He quickly followed to the right and slashed his sword forward. Suddenly, he circled his sword back, and the point of the sword thrust back out again. It was the Huashan School's sword move called Return of the Prodigal Son. Ling Huchang lifted his sword to block it. Yue Bu Chun's sword was now dancing around in midair, executing the sword move called Green Pines Welcoming Guests. Ling Huchang again blocked the attack. Yue Bu Chun slashed twice with his sword. Ling Huchang was startled and hurriedly retreated 2 steps. His face was blushing as he called out, "Master!" Yue Bu Chun snorted and continued with his attack, forcing Ling Huchang to take another step back. Everyone saw that Ling Huchang's face was blushing, and he seemed to be in a desperate situation. They did not understand a single thing, and all thought, "There's nothing strange about his master's 3 attacks. What's so great about it? How can it unexpectedly make things difficult for Ling Huchang?" Ooh, what's going on? None of them knew that these 3 moves that Yue Bu Chun used were from the sword art that Ling Huchang and Yue Lingshan created, the Chongling sword art. Ling Huchang suddenly felt sentimental, remembering the past when he was looking forward to the days when he would be able to share marital vows with his little martial sister, and when Yue Lingshan treated him nicely. With their childish thoughts they had then felt that if the Yue couple could pass down martial arts, then the rest of the disciples would be able to as well. Thus, the 2 of them tried to create a set of sword art of their own, and only the 2 of them were able to use this set of Chongling sword art. That's why seeing this set of moves gave him a bittersweet taste in his heart. He didn't expect that Yue Bu Chun would unexpectedly use this sentence. He didn't expect that Yue Bu Chun would unexpectedly use these 3 moves. Ling Huchang felt helpless, ashamed, and sad. He thought, "Little martial sister has already broken our ties of love. You're using this set of sword moves to make me recall my feelings and to put my mind in confusion. You want to kill me, then just kill me." He felt that there was nothing for him to continue living on this world, and death would be better. Yue Buchun's longsword was thrust out again. The move he used was Nong Yu playing the flute. Ling Huchang knew this move very well, and he just unconsciously blocked it. Yue Buchun followed with a move called Xiao Shi riding the dragon. These two moves complemented each other, and the movements were graceful, especially Xiao Shi riding the dragon, with the long sword dancing in the air, looking like a divine dragon flying elegantly through the air. According to a story, during the time of Chun Qiu, Qin Mu Kong had a daughter called Nong Yu who loved to play the flute. There was a youth called Xiao Shi who arrived riding a dragon and could play the flute divinely. Later on, he taught Nong Yu how to play the flute. Qin Mu Kong then allowed him to take her to be his wife. Ideal son-in-law was a literary reference that these moves were taken from. Later on, the pair of husband and wife transcended to immortality together and occupied the middle peak of the Huashan mountain. Huashan's Jade Maiden Peak had Phoenix Pavilion. The middle peak had Jade Maiden Temple, Jade Maiden Cave, Jade Maiden Hair Washing Basin, and a dressing table. Every one of them gained their fame from this fable. Ling Huchang and Yue Lingshan had often gone to all these places, but the meaning behind the story of Xiao Shi and Nong Yu, their happiness, and also what went on in the heart of those two people, they never knew any of those. At the moment he saw Yue Buchun use the move Xiao Shi riding the dragon, Ling Huchang's heart became confused while his hand moved to block the attack. He thought, why does Master want to use this move? Does he want to remind me of my mistakes and kill me? So these moves were, I guess, referencing a love story. An ancient love story. But why is he using it? After Yue Buchun used this move, he again used the move Return of the Prodigal Son, followed by Green Pines Welcoming Guests, which was followed by the three moves from the Chongling sword art. These moves were again followed by Nong Yu playing the flute and Xiao Shi riding the dragon moves. When masters competed, even when the moves went above 1,000, they would never duplicate the pattern. This pattern of moves had already been executed to fight the opponent before, so using them again would be useless. When the enemy was familiar with your pattern, then he could take advantage of it to make an attack. When Yue Buchun used this pattern for a second time, it caused all the spectators to be puzzled. Ling Huchang saw Yue Buchun use the move Xiao Shi riding the dragon for the second time. This time, this move was followed by the three moves from the Chongling sword art. Suddenly, a thought flashed in his mind, and he was enlightened. So, Master used these sword arts to remind me I must abandon my evil ways and return to the righteous way. And then the return of the prodigal son means that I would be accepted back into the Huashan school. There were many ancient pine trees on Mount Huashan with branches full of leaves hanging down and stretching, as if they were welcoming guests who were coming up the mountain. They are called welcoming guest pine trees. The move, Green Pines Welcoming Guests, was formed to resemble the appearance of these ancient pines. He thought, Master is saying that if I return to the family of the Huashan school, not only would I be welcomed back, even the pine trees on the mountain would welcome me back. His heart trembled. Master said that not only would I be welcomed back into the family, he would also give little Marshall's sister as my wife. Master used a few moves from that Chongling sword art to make me understand his intention clearly. It's just that I was muddled and didn't understand him, so he used the two moves of Nong Yu playing the flute and Xiao Shi riding the dragon again. Oh, the master is like, you can come back and you can marry my daughter. Returning to Huashan and marrying Yue Lingshan. Returning to Huashan and marrying Yue Lingshan were two of his biggest desires. Suddenly, in front of all these masters, Yue Buchun promised him these two matters. Even though it wasn't conveyed outright by words, he understood it completely from these several sword moves. Ling Huchong knew that Master's most important vow was never to take back what he already said. He already promised to take him back into the Huashan family and also betroth his daughter to him. So if he fulfilled his promises, then these matters would definitely happen. In that instant, a feeling of happiness filled his chest. He naturally knew of the deep love between Yue Lingshan and Ling Pingzhi. He also knew that she did not love him anymore, but instead felt hatred towards him. But the marriage between man and woman was decided entirely by the parents, and the daughter had no say in it. It had been that way for more than 1,000 years. Yue Buchun had already betrothed his daughter to him, and Yue Lingshan would not be able to reject it. Ling Huchang thought in his heart, if I were to be able to re-enter the Huashan school, I would be thanking the heavens and earth already, but to also become the partner with this little Marshall's sister, but to also become partner with little Marshall's sister, that would really be a joy from heaven. Little Marshall's sister would surely be unhappy at the beginning, but I would be suitable for her. After a long time, she would see that I'm sincere towards her and would slowly change her attitude. He was beaming from ear to ear and was feeling very happy in his heart. Yue Buchun continuously used the moves Return of the Prodigal Son, followed by Green Pines welcoming guests. His sword moves were becoming urgent, looking like he was becoming impatient. Ling Huchang comprehended what Yue Buchun meant. Master is telling me, the prodigal son, to return. Of course, he couldn't say this out loud, but he wants me to throw away my sword and admit defeat immediately. Then I would be able to rejoin the school immediately. I would be able to return to Huashan and get married to little Marshall's sister. My life would be returned to me. What else do I want? But what about Ying Ying, Chief Ren, and Brother Xiang? If I lose this fight, then the three of them would be detained on top of Mount Shaoshi, and they might be even killed. I'm only coveting for my own happiness and not repaying other people's kindness. Can I still be called a person? At this thought, the back of his body was covered with cold sweat, and his vision became blurry. He saw Yue Buchun slash his swords horizontally, passing very close to his mouth, then pointing the sword towards him, pushed forward. This was the move Nong Yu playing the flute. Ling Huchang's heart was moved again. Ying Ying was willing to die for me, but I didn't even pay any attention to her plight. Is there anyone else in this world who is more vicious than Ling Huchang? No matter what, I have to repay Ying Ying's kindness. Suddenly, he felt dizzy and heard a zheng sound as the sword fell on the ground. All the spectators cried out in surprise. Ling Huchang's body was swaying. When he opened his eyes, he saw Yue Buchun had leapt back and was looking furious. Yue Buchun's right wrist was bleeding. Ling Huchang checked the point of his sword and saw blood dripping from it. He was greatly startled. He knew that while his mind was in confusion, his hand was blocking the attack, but somehow he unexpectedly used the Dugu 9 sword move to pierce Yue Buchun's right wrist. He immediately threw away his sword and knelt on the ground. Master, disciple has sinned and deserves death. Yue Buchun kicked out and hit him squarely on his chest. The kick was very fierce and swift, causing Ling Huchang to fly off. While his body was in midair, his vision became dark. He heard a pung sound, and his body dropped on the ground, but he didn't feel any pain as he passed out. Okay. That was the chapter. Alright, so some shit went down. Did you guys like that? Did you guys like that chapter? So it looks like Yue Buchun is saying that he would take him back and betroth his daughter to him. Okay. But then Ling Huchang, I guess he's just automatically, like instinctively, just attacked Yue Buchun. So he kind of rejected that offer that he wanted so much. Good chapter. Yeah, I like that. I like how you can. I like how they can communicate just by sword moves alone. Like fighting is like a conversation. So you can have a conversation while fighting, and not even talking. It was a good one. You like it? Cool. I had, yeah. So remember I said that I was gonna buy snacks from the local Japanese supermarket. Yeah, I didn't, but I still have this. This thing from last week. So yeah, I'll try to buy some this week, but I'll just eat this. Yue Buchun is somewhat harmless and fairly harmless. Yeah. His martial arts is now like, it sucks, right? Compared to his disciple now. He's no match for his disciple. A little mad at Chang'e, not gonna lie. Yeah, he's kind of naive, right? Do you guys think that the master was being honest? Like, was the master being honest in asking him to come back? I don't know. I don't know. He might have been, or he might not have been. Oh. Okay, I'm sleepy, you guys. I'm gonna go to sleep because I didn't get a good night's sleep last night. I barely slept. But yeah. Thank God for Dooku. The Dooku kind of saved him. You think? What if the master was being honest and the master really wanted him back? I don't know. I can't imagine that, right? Because his daughter likes the other guy. So why would he betroth his daughter to Ling Huchang, who he hates, apparently? The master was being very sarcastic. Oh, no one believes the master, apparently. You think Yue Buchun is lying? Okay. Yeah. I feel bad for the master wife. Like, she really loves the guy. She really loves him. And she doesn't know what the hell her husband is doing right now. Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for joining, you guys. Thanks for joining. Sorry that we had a little bit of a technical issue in the beginning with the audio and stuff. But yeah. All right, good night. Sleep well. He put a hit on Ling Chang. No way he'll take him back. Okay. So no one trusts the master. Gotcha. All right, wait. Thanks for joining. I'll see you next week. All right. I love you. Bye.